You cut your hand today, and your first instinct is probably simple. Clean it, cover it, keep going. But imagine getting hurt when there's no pharmacy, no antiseptic bottle, no emergency room, and no one telling you exactly what to do. The strange part is that your ancestors still survived injuries. Not every time, not even close, but often enough that their bones tell a remarkable story. When you look at an ancient skeleton, you're not just looking at a dead body. You're looking at a record of what happened to a living person. A crack in a bone can reveal a fall. A healed fracture can reveal weeks or months of survival. A damaged joint can reveal how an injury changed the way someone moved for the rest of their life. And sometimes, the most important evidence is not the injury itself. It is the fact that the person survived it. So what actually happened when ancient humans got hurt? The first thing to understand is that an injury was rarely just an injury. For a hunter-gatherer, a broken leg could become a food problem. A deep cut could become an infection. A damaged hand could make hunting, gathering, cooking, or carrying water much harder. Your modern life separates many of these problems. You can injure your ankle and still order food. You can break an arm and still have someone drive you to a hospital. You can develop an infection and reach for medicine. Your ancestors did not have those safety nets. That meant recovery depended heavily on the body, the environment, and other people. And this is where the bones become surprisingly revealing. In 1982, anthropologists Eric Trinkhaus and M.R. Zimmerman published a detailed study of injuries found in several Neanderthals from Shanidar cave in Iraq. The evidence was dramatic. Shanidar 1, for example, had survived multiple serious injuries. He had damage to his skull. His right arm had been severely affected. His foot had suffered a fracture. His bones also showed long-term changes associated with those injuries. Yet the injuries had healed. That single fact changes the story. Shanidar 1 was not simply someone who got injured and died. He was someone who got badly hurt and lived long enough for his body to repair at least some of the damage. The Smithsonian estimates that Shanidar 1 lived into his later adult years, despite major physical impairments. That raises a much bigger question. How did he get through everyday life? Imagine trying to move through a rocky landscape with a damaged leg. Imagine carrying food with one arm that no longer works normally. Imagine needing shelter, water, warmth, and food while your body is recovering. You cannot simply tell an injured person to rest for 6 weeks and deliver groceries to their cave. Someone has to help. This is why ancient injury can tell you something about ancient society. A healed injury may be evidence of biology, but survival can also point toward social support. Researchers have debated exactly how much care Neanderthals provided to injured group members. Some interpretations have been cautious. Others argue that severe impairments could not easily be survived without assistance. The important point is not that every injured person was carefully nursed. The evidence cannot tell you that. The important point is that some individuals survived injuries that would have made independent survival extremely difficult. That suggests something powerful. Other people mattered. A wounded person may have needed food brought closer. They may have needed protection from predators or rival groups. They may have needed help moving between shelter and water. They may have needed someone to stay nearby while the worst part of the injury passed. None of this requires a hospital. Care can be as simple as sharing food, or waiting, or carrying something, or helping someone stand. And sometimes that may have been enough to turn a fatal injury into a survivable one. But what about the actual wound? What did ancient humans do to stop bleeding? You have to be careful here. Archaeology rarely preserves the exact moment-to-moment treatment of a wound. A bone can tell you that an injury happened. It can sometimes tell you that it healed. It usually cannot tell you exactly which plant, cloth, tool, or technique someone used on the day it happened. So claims about specific ancient remedies need caution. Still, basic responses to injury would have been hard to avoid. Pressure can slow bleeding, rest can reduce strain, immobilizing a damaged limb can protect it while bone heals. Keeping a wound from being repeatedly disturbed can help recovery. None of these ideas require modern medicine. They are physical realities. If you break a bone and keep stressing it, healing becomes harder. If you stop using it, protect it, and allow the body time, the bone can begin repairing itself. Your skeleton actually records part of this process. After a fracture, the body creates new bone around the break. Over time, that repair can remodel. That means a skeleton can preserve evidence that someone survived long after the original injury. And this creates one of the strangest things about studying ancient humans. The people who survived can sometimes be easier to understand than the people who died. A fatal injury may leave a damaged bone with little evidence of healing. A healed injury can tell you that time passed. Sometimes a lot of time. It tells you that the injured person continued living, eating, moving, sleeping, interacting, doing whatever work their environment demanded. And some injuries were not temporary. They became part of the person's body. Shanidar 1 is again one of the clearest examples. His injuries were associated with lasting changes to his right arm and other parts of his skeleton. He likely had significant physical limitations, yet he survived. This does not mean ancient humans were constantly gentle or perfectly cooperative. Their lives were dangerous. Thomas Berger and Eric Trinkhaus studied patterns of trauma among Neanderthals and found that their injuries showed an unusual concentration of head and neck trauma compared with several recent human samples. One possible explanation was the danger of close encounters with large animals during hunting. In other words, getting hurt may have been built into the lifestyle. A hunt could go wrong, an animal could charge, a person could fall, a stone could strike, a weapon could fail, a fight could begin, or a simple accident could happen while moving through difficult terrain. And there was another problem: infection. Today, a deep wound can sometimes be treated quickly with antibiotics. Ancient humans had no antibiotics. That does not mean every wound became infected. It means infection could turn a manageable injury into a serious threat. Bone can sometimes preserve signs of infection too. Shanidar 1, for example, showed evidence of osteomyelitis, an infection involving bone. That is a reminder that surviving the original injury was only the beginning. You could survive the cut and still face the consequences afterward. This makes ancient healing look less like a single event and more like a long negotiation with your environment. Your body repairs itself, your movement changes, your group adapts, your food supply changes, and you wait. Sometimes the body wins, sometimes it does not. One especially fascinating case is Shanidar 3. This Neanderthal had a partially healed injury to the ninth rib. Researchers Stephen Churchill and colleagues studied the wound and compared it with injuries produced by experimental stone points. The exact circumstances remain uncertain. It may have involved violence. It may have involved an accident. Other explanations are possible, but the bone itself contains an important clue. It had begun to heal. That means the person survived the initial injury for some period of time. A sharp object had penetrated the chest, and yet the story did not end immediately. That is what makes prehistoric trauma so revealing. The injury is dramatic. The survival is even more dramatic, and not all injuries came from hunting or conflict. Daily life itself was dangerous. Imagine collecting food while climbing over uneven ground. Imagine carrying a child. Imagine processing animals with stone tools. Imagine traveling over rocks without modern footwear. Imagine sleeping in rough shelters. Imagine working with your hands every day because your hands are your tools. Small injuries would have been normal: cuts, bruises, sprains, burns, broken fingers, twisted ankles. Most of these would never appear in the archaeological record. Soft tissue disappears. Minor injuries leave no permanent mark. So the skeleton gives you a biased picture. It preserves the injuries that affected bones strongly enough to leave. Evidence that means ancient humans were probably not walking around with skeletons full of dramatic fractures. The archaeological record simply makes the dramatic cases easier to see, and there is another reason to be careful. A healed bone does not automatically prove sophisticated medical treatment. A fracture can heal naturally, sometimes badly, sometimes surprisingly well. Scientists can look at alignment, remodeling, deformity, infection, and other clues to estimate what happened, but the evidence does not always reveal whether someone deliberately treated the injury. This distinction matters. Ancient humans did not need modern surgery to have medical knowledge, but neither should every healed bone be turned into proof of an ancient doctor. The reality was probably messier. People learned from experience. They saw what happened when a wound was left alone. They saw what happened when someone kept using an injured limb. They learned which foods were safe. They learned which plants were useful. They learned when a person was getting worse. Some knowledge may have been passed between generations, some may have been forgotten, some may have been discovered by accident, and some may have been wrong. That sounds primitive, but it is actually how much human knowledge develops. Try something. Observe what happens. Remember it. Teach it to someone else over thousands of generations. Those small observations can accumulate. There is also something deeply human about the way injury changes your relationship with other people. When you're healthy, independence feels normal. You walk, you hunt, you gather, you carry, you travel. Then one day your leg stops working. Suddenly, another person's ability to bring food becomes part of your survival. Another person's patience matters. Another person's willingness to help matters. And this may be one reason injuries are so valuable for understanding ancient societies. Tools tell you what humans could make. Weapons tell you what humans could hunt or fight with. But healed injuries can tell you something about how humans treated each other. Not perfectly, not universally, but sometimes survival itself becomes evidence of connection. You can see this in Shanidar 1. A person with major impairments lived long enough for those injuries to heal and become part of his skeleton. Exactly how much assistance he received cannot be reconstructed with certainty, but his survival forces a simple realization: a human life can continue even after the body becomes less capable. And when that happens in a demanding environment, relationships become part of the survival system. That idea reaches far beyond prehistory. Modern medicine makes injury feel like an individual problem. You get hurt, you call a doctor, you take medicine, you recover. But underneath all that technology is something much older. Someone notices, someone helps, someone brings food, someone waits, someone protects you while your body repairs itself. The tools have changed, the basic human problem has not. Ancient humans did not have emergency rooms. They did not have antibiotics. They did not have x-rays. They did not have surgical teams waiting behind automatic doors. But they had bodies capable of healing. They had experience. They had fire, shelter, tools, food, and knowledge of their surroundings. And perhaps most importantly, they had each other. So the next time you get a small cut and reach for a bandage, remember what that tiny act represents. You're doing something incredibly old. You're protecting damaged tissue. You're giving the body time. You're responding to pain with care. The difference is that your ancestors had to build an entire survival system around those same problems. When ancient humans got hurt, they did not simply tough it out alone. Sometimes they rested, sometimes they adapted, sometimes their bodies healed, sometimes infection or severe trauma won, and sometimes someone else made the difference between being injured and being gone. The hospital is modern. The human instinct to help a wounded person is much, much older.